Bare, to uncover and expose to view.
Naked, to be undisguised.
The Bare Naked Show?
The Bare Naked Show is a show that dares to shed light on soul trauma.
Experiences that are difficult to discuss, but necessary to promote healing. You have to touch it to heal it.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to our brand new show, The Bare Naked Show with Dr. Simmons and Jae Hers. I'm your girl, Dr. Simmons, psychologist, humanitarian, and entrepreneur. And my partner for this show is...
Hey, everybody. I'm your girl, Jae Hers, radio and TV personality, entrepreneur, and creator. I am so excited that you are joining us. Welcome to the Bare Naked Show. Woo! Yes. Awesome. This has been such a journey, and we're happy that you are here with us. And you're probably asking, Doc, Jay, the Bare Naked Show? What is the Bare Naked Show? I am so glad you asked. Doc, tell the people who we are.
Sure. So the Bare Naked Show is a show that dares to uncover what we're calling soul trauma. And soul trauma is basically negative experiences that you've had in your life that impacts how you operate. It impacts the way that you think, the way you feel. It affects you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. So this show is going to be covering all of that, and we hope to help you along with that.
That's awesome. Absolutely. One of the things that we're going to get into talking about, we have a lot of different topics. And as Doc said, uncover some things. You mentioned there's a word that we talk about, and you saw it in our intro, and that, or it's a term, I should say, it's not one word. Soul trauma. Soul trauma? Doc, tell the people more about soul trauma.
So listen, when I think about soul trauma, I'll come from a biblical place for a second, okay? In scriptures, when we talk about our soul, the Bible tells us that our soul is the seat of our emotions, our thoughts, and how we, our personality, everything lies within our soul. So soul trauma is basically adverse or negative experiences that affects every aspect of who we are. It affects our emotional state, our mental state, our physical well-being, as well as our relationship with one another. So that's really the summary of what a soul trauma is.
Okay. All right. So I'm glad that you shared that with us. And as you all are going to see, this is our safe space. It's not just Doc and Jay. It's all of our safe space. I think one of the things that was important is normalizing having conversations so that people can understand that soul trauma exists, to maybe for some people to have that aha moment to know that this is something that maybe I need to take a little deeper, further look into. But not only that, but so there's not that stigma, right?
Yeah.
So, Yeah, so definitely, again, very excited. One of the things, something else, you know who we are. We've talked about ourselves. We want to talk a little bit more about the show. Doc, can you tell us the Bare Naked Show? So, where did this idea come from? What's the vision? Give us a little bit more insight.
Sure. The Bare Naked Show, you know, that particular show, the name was intentional. The reason why we're calling it the Bare Naked Show is because there are so many things that we go through in our lives that oftentimes we just cover it up and hope that it disappears. But rather than covering it up, our show, the intention of our show is really to uncover those very difficult conversations, those hard experiences that we've gone through that we've covered up. Let me just tell you a little bit about how the show came about, okay? A couple years ago, about 2018, 2 years ago, I was doing a lot of work with sexual and gender-based violence, and I was amazed at how many people had gone through traumatic experiences in their relationships and in their lives, and how these individuals never shared a word about that with anybody. And for some of them, it was their first time sharing those things when they were talking to me. And I remember distinctly, I was driving and I was thinking, man, how do we bring healing to individuals who have suffered so much all of their lives? And in that time, a word was impressed on my heart. And it says, you know what? These individuals need to bare naked in an effort to begin the process of healing. So that's how the show came about.
Bare Naked. That's a very provocative name.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is a provocative name, but you know, the topics that we're talking about are provocative topics too. You know, they're kind of those taboo topics that we're not as comfortable discussing all the time. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like this show, there's going to be some vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of vulnerability, I think, and not just on one side, but from both sides. Yeah. And you're probably saying, okay, well, we see Doc, she's, you know, going to talk to us and give us some medical insight. Again, we are here. It's a discussion space. It's your safe space. And I want to keep expressing that because as we move on this journey, we want you to take this journey with us. We want you to feel safe. We want you to feel comfortable because, as Doc said, these are not pretty topics. They are quite provocative. And that actually leads me to ask you a little bit more about soul trauma. You touched on it. And it may even segue to what our audience should expect because people didn't know what soul trauma was. And for some people, they may think, oh, well, I've had something happen, but it's not necessarily like so traumatic, right? And they feel like sometimes we may not even recognize trauma for what it is. So let's have that conversation a little bit more, Doc. What can our audience expect from the Bare Naked Show?
Sure. Well, our audience can expect authentic, courageous conversations around difficult topics. Okay. So you were talking about soul trauma. And one of the things I thought about was if you want to recognize soul trauma, there are so many ways that we can see it. But one thought that came to my mind was, let's just say you're in a relationship and for some reason you're having a conversation and the person say a particular word and all of a sudden it triggers something within you. And that just leads to a huge fight or a huge argument. The person doesn't realize that they just triggered something, but you've been holding this wound inside of your soul, right? And all that person did was just touch it a little bit. And before you know it, it's a big blow up argument. And we see that a lot. And I think we don't realize how much we hold within our bodies and how many baggages we're carrying with us until it is triggered. So we'll be talking about some of those things, you know, even if it's things like racism or things like, microaggressions that we have a very exciting show coming up, and we're going to talk about, I think a lot of maybe Africans in the diaspora might be able to relate to this. The African American experience.
African American, the question mark, right?
Question mark. Because it's so powerful because we're going to be talking about our experiences, right? Being African in America and what that means, and just kind of like the multi-complex, the layers that comes along with it. So those are just some examples of some of the things we'll be covering in this show. And I think you guys will be really excited about what we're covering.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the things to expect also, I want to be a bit transparent because that's just my nature. I was hesitant. This is a vision that when it was brought to me, I was like, go for it. That's a great idea. You should do it. And then Doc goes, well, I want you to do it with me. Not I. No. I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want people in my business. I had a lot of objections. And one of the things that you said that I find very, one of the things something that I admire about working with you, just as you as a person, is healing, right? Sometimes when we have experienced those traumas, like you said, we carry baggages, and when we've healed, there's a responsibility, I believe, to help others in that journey of healing.
Yeah.
So the Bare Naked Show is so unique in that you're here and we're healing. And even if I may not relate specifically to your particular trauma, I'm able to be in a position to where I understand what healing looks like and how sometimes healing is not comfortable. Sometimes healing seems to hurt more than the thing that is actually the injury, right? Like if someone breaks a foot, they've been walking on that broken foot, so they've become accustomed, and it's like, oh no, your foot is broken. It actually needs to be fixed. It needs to be healed. That process, to have that thing to break and then to set it, and you're in a cast and it's uncomfortable and it's itching, is healing. So I wanted to be transparent in that this is not going to be your average, like run of the mill. These are the symptoms and this is what you do, but very much holistic. And one of the amazing things is spiritual, soul trauma. And what hurts our soul, and Doc, you said it hurts your soul. It manifests itself in your body. Like Doc mentioned about the trigger. If someone says something and you're triggered, think about it. It may not even be something that's said, but you go around a certain place. There's a smell. That's a trigger. And you're like, I always get a headache when I smell this thing. You don't recognize that scent is connected to a person or a place where you experienced a trauma. And for you, it's just, oh, I'm allergic to this scent. There's a little bit more. So this is what this healing looks like. This is like where we're walking, and we want you to heal. We want you to know we're being vulnerable, but we're not here to be your healers, because ultimately, I know I am not the healer, but I can show you the healer. I just wanted to share that with you all.
As you were speaking, Jay, there was a concrete example that came to my mind regarding soul trauma. So let's just say you're in a relationship and you're coming from a relationship where there was a lot of control. Your partner was very controlling. They wanted to know everything about what you did. They were constantly searching your phone and just very evasive in terms of your privacy. You now get into a new relationship, not having healed from that previous relationship. And your partner says to you, oh, honey, when are let's just say you're going out and your partner says to you, honey, when are you coming back? And all of a sudden you go into, why are you trying to control me? Why are you asking when I'm coming back? That's a trigger. That person is coming from a place of genuine concern about you. And all of a sudden, because you're coming from a place of, complete dictation and kind of having someone control every aspect of your life, you're already looking through that lens that your next partner is going to be doing that exact thing. When in reality, they meant it was an innocent comment. So you see, when we still walk around with traumas in our bodies, what ends up happening is it affects everything that we do, even the way we view the world. Someone might be looking at you. Let's say you were bullied in school, right? And you're walking around you're walking around in the store, and someone is looking at you, and your initial reaction might be, what they looking at? Why are they looking at me like that? And it's like,
right.
that person may be looking at you and they walk up to you and they say, oh my God, I love your hair. It looks so cute. But you had that trauma from then, and you're anticipating that person's looking at you because they're somehow judging you.
Right.
And that's kind of how soul trauma works. And, the more I can go on and on about different experiences like that, but the idea behind all of this is that there are certain experiences that we walk around with that still dictates the way we view ourselves and the way we view the world, and also the way we relate to other human beings. The idea for this show is to get us to a place where we can uncover those things, layer by layer. Let's peel this onion and let's talk about how do we go from being trapped in our own soul traumatic experiences to now beginning the process of healing. The first thing is recognizing that it's even a thing, right? And then we can go on and start that process. So that's what we're about here.
That's awesome. And I appreciate you saying that. And I like how you use the word experiences, because I love the example that you gave with the relationships. Soul trauma doesn't have one face, right? It doesn't look like one particular thing. And the bullying, again, something as minute as someone looking at you because they like your hair, or they want to compliment something about you, becoming a trigger. You know what I mean? And then it doesn't have one face. And that's one of the things that, as we've been developing this show, we're talking about it. You talked about the onion. I remember we're having a conversation. There's so many layers, there's so many layers. There's so much that can peel back. I think that that's one of the things, as we are talking about what we're hoping to accomplish, I think, to make it succinct, we are a starting point. Yeah. But I believe we're not the end all, right? We're not the treatment, but we want to help you first recognize and know what soul trauma is, recognize those traumas. But what else do we hope we will accomplish as the Bare Naked Show?
Sure. That's a really good. I love that you keep stressing the fact that we're not, this is a safe space. This is a conversational space. Not like, well, Dr. Simmons said, blah, blah, blah. I am not entering into a professional relationship with anyone. This is a show where we're literally just talking about different topics, okay? So this is me outside of my office, all right?
Absolutely.
Some of the things that we can expect from this show is, number one, I really want to normalize the experience of soul trauma so that it's not, in our community in particular, I think among minorities, when it comes to traumatic experiences, it's like a taboo. We're like, oh no, I can't talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it. No one, I would like us, the purpose of this show is to really normalize and destigmatize the experiences. Because just because you went through something traumatic in your life doesn't mean you're so damaged or so defective that we can't, there's no hope for you. I think it's important that we get to a place where we have a conversation and say, you know what? Oh, you went through an abusive relationship too, an emotionally abusive relationship. I can relate to that. I've been there. And I think a lot of times when we've gone through something, we think we're the only ones that have gone through it. But when we start to talk to other people, we realize, wow, I'm not alone in this. Other people have gone through it also. So the idea here is, let's normalize it. Not saying that it's okay, but let's let people know that it happens to more than just you. And let's destigmatize it. So, because when we destigmatize something, it makes it easier for us to talk about it as human beings. It's no longer just, oh, great, I can't talk about this thing. So it sets the stage, it opens the stage for us to talk about it. The other thing is really to provide some basic foundational education about different topics, right? Well, we'll say, what does abuse look like? What is emotional abuse? What's physical abuse? Some people are in the, in situations where they're in financially abusive relationship. One person runs everything and they're stuck because that person runs everything. And then how do they express that? Maybe they're like super frugal about their, about everything, or maybe it manifests itself in different ways. Someone might ask them for $2 and they're like, oh, even you're trying to control my money. And it's like, no, I need to get some soda, my bad. So those are the idea here is, listen, let's normalize it, let's destigmatize this thing, and let's provide some basic education about, traumatic experiences that can really, I think when we touch it, our tagline is you got to touch it to heal it.
You have to touch it
when
to heal it.
something, you start to say, okay, it's not too bad after all. Maybe I can begin the process of healing. So that's what we hope to do here.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. Something else I want to add is we want to entertain. Yes. It is, as you mentioned, we are having dialogue. We're opening up some things. So there will be some things that the way that we present our conversation, there will be entertainment. We will be able to have, I think that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to, because as I said before, I really didn't want to become vulnerable in any of what we're talking about, but it's necessary for us to heal. We're touching it, right? But in a way that we can still be entertained and not like it's just hee hee ha ha laughing. We're not even joking about what we're talking about, but in a way that we can be educated, we're informed, we begin healing and be entertained, because who doesn't want to sit? It's kind of like, you're sitting with your girlfriends or your guy friends or whomever, and you're having that dialogue. And a lot of times I was thinking about this, the conversations that we're going to be having, we're already having in our living rooms, or, having when people get together at the cookouts, or, well, we're having this conversation. Sometimes it's on social media and Twitter. So, Facebook, Twitter. So these are some conversations we'll still be having that dialogue in a different format, just bringing it here so that it's more intimate with us and you.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, I think a lot of times, I'm glad that you mentioned healing, entertainment rather, because I think that when you hear the kinds of topics that we're going to be covering, it's so easy to think, oh my gosh, how can any entertainment be in that? Not entertainment in like the sense of ha-ha, kiki, ha-ha, but entertainment in the sense that we're going to be vulnerable and we have some funny stories. So as you were talking, I remember we were having a conversation around parenting. We're going to talk about that, and that's a scary one. Parenting, is it parenting, discipline, or abuse?
Yes.
Punishment, discipline, or abuse. So one conversation that came to my mind was, I remember once when my mother was pregnant, I forgot, my brother must have done something, and he never got touched. The girls got it, but the boys were good. And he was so terrified of being punished, right? So what ended up happening is he runs upstairs, tiny little man, he runs up the stairs and he hides underneath the bed. And my mom says to him, do you see how big I am right now? He's like, she said, I'm gonna jump on this bed. I'm gonna hop all the way up and I'm gonna hit this bed so hard it's gonna crush you. And literally he went flying. I've never seen my brother move so quickly. And he was terrified. And it's like, it was a moment that was supposed to be like a punitive moment that we all just had to burst out laughing at, because he never got any punishment. And for him, it's like, this lady is going to crush you. And she like in detail how it was going to go down. So it's those kinds of things that can be a little bit of entertainment, even to a challenging conversation like the ones we will be having.
That is so good. That was a great story. That was a good one. And actually, I want us to, and we're not going to spend a lot of time with you all. So what is coming? What'd you say? Absolutely. Just a little bit. So coming up next, I know one of the things that we want everyone to be able to do is, you mentioned about interaction, and that's another thing everyone should expect. You can be interactive with us. If you have any comments, drop them down in the comment bar. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Come to our Facebook page, The Bare Naked Show with Dr. Simmons and Jae Hers. You can even send an email if you have any questions, comments, suggestions to our email account, which is thebarenakedshow@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. So we're getting ready to wrap up. Doc, what is in store for us next?
Woo, that's a great question. So we give a little tease. Next week, what we're going to be talking about is African American ? Yes. And we are going to be sharing our experiences as Africans living in America. And, for those of us that came at an earlier age, I'll give you a little sneak peek. Is this whole idea of like, am I too American to be African? And am I too African to be American? And
Absolutely.
always we're in this weird space where we're constantly trying to get our sense of belonging. And it's not always easy. So we're going to be tackling that. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, trying to speak, when you first come and trying to speak the American way, but back home,
Oh, that's serious?
are like, sweetie, sit down. So different ways and the impact that has on you growing up, adolescent years into adulthood. So we'll be talking about that. And
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I am really looking forward to that because, even as it stems, which will segue into another one of our topics about racism, knowing certain things, that experience of being African American as an African living in America, the really being multicultural because, we'll talk, and not to give it all away, but we're going to talk about how we had a different upbringing and managing and juggling that. So I'm really, really, really looking forward to that. And someone's like, how is that soul trauma? Stay tuned. Tune in next time because we'll be more than happy to share that with you. Again, I'm excited. I'm happy to be here. Doc, I'm going to let you close us out tonight.
Sure. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for just writing this out. Again, I want to reiterate what my partner said. If you have questions, this is interactive. Shoot us an email, questions, comments, topics you want us to cover. We'll be glad to do so. Once again, this is the Bare Naked Show with Dr. Simmons and Jae Hers. It was a pleasure being with you all. I'm Dr. Simmons, psychologist, entrepreneur, humanitarian. And until next time, you have to touch it to heal it.